This presentation is going to be on scouting report. So it's a big aspect of what we do every day in the G League and in the NBA. A lot of teams work similarly, so I'm going to take you through what we show our players on game day, which is going to be the personnel scouting report, which is the players that are on the other team, what their tendencies are, and then the play edit, which consists of the plays that they're running, concepts that they're doing consistently. Generally how it works before I jump in, coaches will be matched up with an intern or a lesser member of the staff, and then they'll watch 4 or 5 games in the NBA leading up to the team that they're playing. So what we're going to see here is, if I can get it going, the Capital City Go-Go, the G League team for the Washington Wizards. So you can see we're going to start with personnel. This was the 4th time we played them this season. So we already had an idea going into the game who they might be, but it was important that we included some clips of the previous times we played them. So we worked, like I said, with the intern to organize these edits to show our players so they have an understanding of who the team is that we play going into the game. I do want to say, as we go through the edit, if anyone has any questions, just raise your hand. I'll kind of talk through the idea of it more than the specific scout that we're talking about, so please stop me if you have any questions, and I'm happy to answer as we go. So like I said, personnel is the players on the other team. So teams will do it a little differently. The coaches that you'll see after me are with 2 different teams throughout the league, so sometimes our slides or just the details of how we go about organizing the scouting report may be a little different, but we're accomplishing the same goal at the end of the day, which is preparing our teams to play. So you can see we just have this slide before we start, just gives an idea. You have the face on the right-hand side, so our guys know who we're talking about. You can see the number in the middle of the screen and the height, and then some of their important statistics on the left-hand side. This video scouting report gets sent out to our players the night before the game, and then coincides with a paper scouting report that's on their chairs when they come in the morning with a lot of the same information. So by the time they get to this edit, hopefully, which I know all the 07s in the room would have been watching the scouting report if it was given to them the night before, because we prepare so well. But you just hope that our guys watch it, and sometimes they may not have seen it coming into the game, but we do hope that they watch it, and then by this point they already have an idea of who these guys are. So as an example, this is Devin Dotson. He was starting at the point guard for Capital City. So we have, as the clips go, you'll see his number and last name in blue, and then underneath it is just some notes for our players as they're reading that coincides with the clip. So you can see here, I think one thing that I like to do personally is just list the points per game immediately. It gives the players an idea of really who's their main scorers as we go through. And you can see I wrote quick and attacks off the bounce, which means he's using the dribble to get into the paint. So we'll play the clip here. You can see he attacks off the catch and gets downhill, right? So as I'm going through this with our team, I'll just kind of explain. I'll use the similar words that are on the screen and giving an idea as our players are watching it, and they can understand that this clip, he's quick, right? He played off the catch, he ripped it to his right hand, and he was able to get downhill off the bounce into the paint. But coinciding with that information, we also have to let them know what we want them to do, right? So in this case, so if you were able to watch the defender in blue, who's at the top of the key, we may tell our guys he's driving, so we don't want to close all the way out to him at the 3-point line, right? So it's not only important to tell him who the player is on the other team, but also what we need to do to stop him from being effective. So in this clip, he's able to get downhill and get to the paint. We'll generally show 3 clips. It's been different in some of my stops throughout the G League. Here in Greensboro, we do 3 clips for their starters and their best players, and then once we get down to the end of the bench, we may just show 2 clips. We don't want to, it's always a push and pull of how many clips, how much film we want to show, especially before the game, whether it's in the morning or in a meeting right before the game starts. We don't want to overload them with too much film, but just remind them of who each player is as we're going. So Devin Dotson, the next thing, his big thing is he was a playmaker for them. So he gets to the paint, he creates opportunities for his teammates. So you can see the 6 APG means he was getting 6 assists per game. And he was getting into the paint and creating for others. So you can see he plays the action. He was their primary handler. He's getting to the paint and he's creating others. So it was important that we kept him out of the paint. Another thing with him, just that 3rd clip, you can see he shoots the 3. And again, the clip matches the text on the top, but he was shooting 35% on 3 3-point attempts a game. So this just gives our guys some context. 3 3-point attempts for us is not a high volume. I think if you're at 7 3-point attempts in the NBA per game, that's a lot of 3-point attempts. But if you're looking at 3, that's a low volume guy. So even league average, for those of you who don't know, league average in the NBA is 35%. So he's an average 3-point shooter, but on low volume, right? He didn't shoot that many per game. So we were happy to let him do that first as long as we kept him out of the paint. So we just want to give our guys generally 35% of 3-point attempts. Let them know, are they a shooter or not, is really the biggest thing with it, including 3-point percentage and 3-point attempts. Are they a shooter? How much can I help off of that player as we go through? So this is generally, we'll keep going through this, but that's generally the idea of how we get to the scout. And each player will get to 3 clips so our guys have an idea. So moving on to the next guy, this was Jules Bernard, played at UCLA. You can see again, we'll just say his name. And again, our guys should be familiar. Another way that we could approach this with our players would be to bring this slide up, and then before I even show the clip, I may ask our players, what does he do, right? It's not about me knowing these guys. As coaches, we put a lot of time in to understand who they are, but the most important thing is that our players understand. So how are we going to teach them? And one way would be to ask them questions instead of me just sitting here and explaining to the class everything they need to know. We hope that if I ask the questions that they would be able to help me. So sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't, when you're asking guys and quizzing them on how much they watched the film before. So Jules Bernard, 13 points a game. He was a lefty. He's a lefty, so it was important for our guys to know that. He was getting into the paint, but being left-handed, again, this was a clip he finished with his left hand. So I don't want to show a clip if he's going to his right or shooting a jump shot that doesn't match the text on top. So he's getting to the paint, getting downhill. He was a physical driver, and this says on the offensive glass. So we have to make sure we're physical with him, right? We have to make physical on his drives. We're bumping him off. We have to anticipate that he's going to be creating contact as he tries to get into the paint, and that he's going to crash the offensive glass as he does on this clip right here. Again, we mentioned earlier with Devin Dotson, 35% was league average, so Jules Bernard was at 30%, so even though he was taking a few more threes, he was at 30%, which is much below league average. So this team, one of our keys, as you can see from the first 2 guys, they didn't have a lot of shooting on the court. As I go through, you'll recognize not a lot of guys were even at league average, so we were happy to pack the paint, make them kick it out, make sure we were helping off them and living with contested jump shots after we protected the paint first. Anybody have any questions to this point? Any questions? Any questions? Thank you. All right, so we'll keep it going. But again, the idea is the same. So as we move through this, it's just really going through. And I can go through it a little quicker with our players. We take about 15 minutes tops to go through this. 10, 15 minutes. We'll have a board behind us that'll have similar information, and we'll just kind of fly through this. So I'm going to go through it a little quicker as I would with our players. Davion Mintz, he was at 9 points per game. He's coming off the bench. He was a secondary handler. So a secondary handler means he's not the one bringing the ball up the court necessarily, but he's a guy that will play in the action. So you can see this is Dotson, number 23, handing the ball off to Mintz, who I'm talking about right now, and now he's the one coming off this handoff and playing the pick and roll. So he's not a guy who handles the pressure and brings the ball and gets them into offense, but he's a guy who, once they got the ball across half court, who would play in the actions, who could create some offense for them in the half court. So in this case, he's able to get downhill and finish at the rim. He was a shot creator. This is out of isolation. So he's not a guy who's organizing them, but he is a guy who can create his own shot, as he does in this case off the bounce. He was at 33% on 4 3-point attempts. Again, a little bit below league average, not on high volume. So again, one of our keys in this game with them was to have them shoot 35 3-point attempts. 35, that was the league average this year in the G League. In our games against them, we beat them when they shot 28 3-point attempts, and we lost when they shot, we lost when they shot 28, and then we beat them when they had 33. So it was important for us going into the game to have a goal, as you can see with the 3 guys so far. Not a heavy shooting team, as I mentioned, so we tried to give our guys a clear goal that they could have going into the game, that they understood what the keys were. One of the main keys to the game was try to get them to shoot as many threes as possible. Craig Sword coming off the bench, not coming off the bench, starting this game. He was a cutter. So again, in this clip, just showing them that if he cuts, if our guys turn their head, you could lose him. He'll get into the paint. He's finishing at the rim. He was a big athlete, driver. Again, the clips coincide with the talking point. He's driving, he's getting downhill, and then he's on the offensive glass. So we have to make sure if he's on the offensive glass, again, telling them not just who he is, but also giving our players what they need to do relative to what he does on the court. So he's crashing the boards, so we had to make sure our guys knew that we had to block out. Jay Huff, 7-1. This is one of the best defensive teams in the league. So we're starting with his offense, but Jay Huff ended up winning Defensive Player of the Year this year in the G League. He captained this defense, and he got signed to a two-way during the middle of the season, which is he was on the Lakers G League team, and then the Wizards, who we're talking about right now, signed him to a two-way contract, which means he could play sometimes in the NBA and sometimes in the G League. So he had a great season with the Lakers until he got traded and continued his great season with the Wizards, leading to his eventual being awarded the Defensive Player of the Year. So he's big, he was physical, he was getting downhill, he would facilitate, he would play pick and roll, he was a pretty good screener. As you can see on this clip, he's screening and he's rolling and playing around the rim. Dump off, so he gets a dunk there. 37% on 2 3-point attempts. Like I said, that's low volume, but it's above league average. So 2 3-point attempts is not a number that we'd be super concerned with. In terms of closing out him and running him off, as he's not somebody that's really going to be consistently shooting the three. Quentin Jackson, who was signed to a two-way. Maybe go with one or two more guys, as I think we get the gist of what the personnel scout is. But he's athletic, he was driving, he was getting downhill, similar to the guys before. Not a shooter, really just trying to drive it, and he was physical. So we had to shift, we had to match his physicality on his drives, and then wall up and not foul to get him at the rim. And again, we talked about threes, right? Threes were a heavy emphasis in this game. Ironically, going into this game, we talked about threes so much, they ended up making about 50% of their threes in this game, and they beat us. But it was the one thing that we were okay with giving up. So Quentin Jackson is a guy in this game who ended up making a couple, but we were okay with our scout. We trusted our scout going into it, that we were okay giving that up if that's the way they wanted to beat us. So again, the idea of the scouting report, just to give our guys an idea who the players are of the other team, what their tendencies are, how they can be used with the way the other team plays, and then our guys have an idea of what they need to do when they go out and execute it. So as I skip through, the other half of this film that we show our guys is just about their offense. What are they running? What plays are they running? How do they organize themselves? What concepts are they doing consistently? And then talking about how we want to defend it. Like I said before about the personnel, a guy who's going to crash the glass, we have to make sure we box out. In this case, if we go through their plays, we want to make sure our guys know how we want to play defense on it. What are we doing on their pick and rolls? What are we doing on pin downs? What are we doing in all the different situations so our guys are prepared to play at the end of the day. So I'll just go through a couple of these. This was a very athletic team. We talked about they're not really shooting it, they want to get to the rim. So key in this game for them was the heavy transition team. So if we miss, we couldn't stab in the backcourt. I know 07s, this is something we talked about, getting back in transition defense. We want to shrink the floor and keep them away from the rim with teams that are athletic, like we've had success with our team, 07s. When we get out and run, we have a lot of success in the open floor. So this team didn't have a lot of shooting, but they really did a good job. If you miss, they're going to run and they're going to try to play fast, and they're going to get to the rim if we don't get back and shrink the floor. When you have guys running the lanes, they get the ball in the middle, they run wide, and then it's tough to keep them away from the rim, which is where they're trying to get to. Moving on into you can see in the top portion of this film, it says half court. So this was the idea of once we get out of transition, we're showing our guys this is what they run in half court, their half court sets. So one thing here, you can see the word ear. Ear was a term that we used for a play that we ran, and then they ran the same play. So one thing that you'll hear commonly throughout NBA circles is that teams are running a lot of the same actions. So we run a lot of the same actions, but we have different terminology. So in this case, we called this play ear. We didn't have a call for what they called it, but we understood if we told our players ear that they would know what's coming because we run a similar thing. So in this case, this is what's called a deep corner pick and roll. You can see the ball handler is all the way down below the free throw line, and now the big is coming to screen for him inside the below the free throw line, and then you have great spacing on the weak side with a corner, a wing, and the top of the key field. Again, I know as sevens we drill spacing a lot, right? It's pretty much the only thing we talk about. So they have great spacing here, and it allows them to play the pick and roll, and then him to get to the paint because it just makes it hard to help. Again, he's able to get to the rim because they had such great spacing on the other side. But the idea is that we show our players this play, and then we have to help them understand how we're going to cover it. What are we going to do defensively? What are we doing on this specific type of pick and roll, which is pretty unique, especially in this case, because if we don't know what we're doing or we make a mistake like they do in this clip, you may be able to tell the guy on the ball is sending him one way, and the guy defending the screener is not ready to help, and because of that, he gets downhill, and they create an advantage, and they're able to attack it from there. So we understood that we had to be clear about how we're defending their actions, and that's what this portion of the film is for. So they ran a play that we knew, and we just had to let our guys know how we were gonna defend it. So that goes the same thing for all these plays. I could go through. This is called wide, another common NBA action. It's 5 out. Right? Again, I'm talking to my team a lot, right? So we see they're in the same spots that we talk about, right? The two corners are filled, the wings are filled, and the top of the key is filled. So getting to an action, he screens away for the guy on the wing, and then they just play out of that. So again, showing our guys, this is what we run. We call it wide. They may call it something else. If we pick up the call during the game, then we can maybe help our players know as the game goes along that the play is coming. We can help call it out once we understand their play call. But our call is wide, so we go through it in the locker room and tell our guys they do run wide so they know what to expect. So that's kind of what it is. We take you through all the way through a bunch of their plays. We may show, it kind of varies depending on where you are in the G League or in the NBA, how much film teams will show. Like I said, we would show about 15 clips of this. 15 clips, which is maybe 5, 6, maximum 7 things to our guys, 7 different concepts, maybe 1 or 2 clips of each, but that's it. We don't want to overload them, like I said, but make sure that they do have an idea of what they can expect. Again, we make sure to cover sideline and baseline out of bounds. So we talked about transition defense, how they're going to play. We talked about playing in the half court, and then in this clip you can see they have the ball on the side, so teams will have different plays they run on the sideline out of bounds. Which is what we get to here. So again, just having an idea, we actually got beat on this play also. So clearly I didn't do a good enough job on the scout going into the game. But just letting our guys know what's coming. And you can see on the sideline out of bounds. So then the last thing, we will show baseline out of bounds also, another specific situation that we want to prepare our guys for just so they have an idea of what's coming. One thing, just as finishing up here, one thing that's important to encourage our guys going into the game, seeing clips that we did with us in Greensboro, seeing clips from the last time we played them where we did things successfully. So I made it a point to you guys to show how we wanted to really help off of their shooters and try to force them to shoot as many threes as possible. So it was important to us to show our guys in a game against them doing that previously. So this is a clip from the last time we had played Capital City. Again, we had a goal of trying to shoot more threes, so we showed this clip to show number 4, who's at the elbow there. He's doing a great job in this clip. You can see, I personally like to use this plus sign in the description there to show our guys that this is a positive clip. This is a positive reinforcement. We did a great job in this clip. So now we do a good job of helping off, right, which forces number 3 to pass the ball out to, that's Quentin Jackson, number 29, and then there's a good closeout on him. We're physical, and we force a miss at the rim. So we showed this clip to show our guys, after we show them what they do, who they are, what they do, talk through what our keys are to the game, but then also what we've done and how we've been successful against them in the past. So this clip was indicative of that. And then the last thing would just be a couple clips again, what we have to do offensively. So teams were doing a great job getting out and running it against them. I'll just let these couple clips go. They were switching pick and rolls, so we had to alleviate their pressure, getting to a deny option here. They take away this hit ahead. Number 23 is not letting the Lakeland guy pass it ahead. Oh boy. So just making sure we kept the ball moving and getting to different counters to counter their disruption. Wanted to let them know there'd be full court pressure. We don't want our guys to be surprised. They inbound the ball, and then a team is picking them up full court, and they catch them off guard, and maybe they get one turnover. Every possession counts, which is why we're trying to prepare them going in. And then the last thing is just that they would be how they defend pick and rolls. What are they doing in dribble handoffs? What are they doing defensively against our offense? So when we're running our stuff, what can they expect and how can we counteract it? That's kind of the whole theme here of getting prepared. Same thing with zone. So again, this has just been 5 clips of their defense, but just trying to cover different concepts, the key things that our guys might see, so they have an awareness going into the game of how we want to attack it. So that's kind of it. This is every game we played in the G League. We play 50 games, so every game we do this to varying lengths. Some more, some heavier, some smaller. Sometimes we'll play a team back to back, so you don't need to show as much film. We may show film directly from the night before if we play them 2 consecutive games, but it's important. We urge our guys to watch beforehand so they know personnel is important. Knowing who you're guarding is important. Knowing the actions, being prepared to play is a huge aspect of being a pro. So we definitely harp on that for our guys, and we use different methods to help them prepare. And the scouting report is a huge aspect of that on a night-to-night basis for us. Any questions? That's it.